That's what I tell everybody. That blackout's normal.
Hey kids, the following program, although edited, contains scenes of sexuality, graphic violence,
ritual satanic behavior,
supernatural, explicit sequences. We're all familiar with them. Some material may be unsuitable for people unaccustomed to viewing films so explicitly presented. Only you can judge if you're mature enough to witness the frank and revealing scenes. They wish to consider whether it should be viewed by under 17. Parental discretion is advised.
Well, howdy, Schlockaholics. Welcome back to another episode of that Midnight Movie Mixtape, baby. I'm joined tonight by a couple of esteemed guests. We got Josh York making his return appearance to the fucking Octagon.
How y'all
we
doing?
Got Dave. Oh, how's it going, baby? How you doing tonight?
Oh, doing good, baby boy. Just, smoking, sipping.
Hell yeah, re-raising some wrestling figures.
I'm getting too old for that. No, I'm doing all right.
We got
man.
a diverse viewing audience over here. It's good to see you too, buddy.
Dave, how you doing, man? I have no idea who you are, but
oh fuck, we got an OG right here, Jeff Goodgamer. Haven't heard from him in a while.
Yeah,
sorry, Dave.
I run two different podcasts. I run two different cut podcasts, Delusions of Grandeur and Inside Movies Galore, up on YouTube, like every Sundays and Mondays. So,
hey, Mo, I'm going to probably mute my mic and blink my camera for a second. I got to go out and get my earbuds. Those do me best every time.
No problem, buddy.
I'll be back here in a second.
Alrighty. Yeah, Josh came on for the Hills Have Eyes episode, I believe it was, and we had a good old time talking about that film. Josh hosts the Metal Mixtape out of Southern Oregon, KISQ, I think is the station. You can listen to him online at the metalmixtape.org, I think it is, or all the information's in the Hills Have Eyes episode if you guys want to click the links over there. And yeah, Dave you host your podcast as regular meetings of the minds over here for these fucking things. It's just all dudes that like cool stuff. So Josh, not to out him or anything, but he had asked before we got in here, like, what exactly is a fantasy film? And that got me thinking, like, there is a little bit of ambiguity to what is, considered a fantasy film. There's, like you were talking about, is it more in the sword and sandals element of it? I think there's elements of that in there. Is it more in like a sort of childhood fable kind of a vibe, like with stuff like Legend or Dark Crystal or Labyrinth? That's kind of a vibe too. Fantasy for me encompasses all of that, from fucking Conan the Barbarian to Lion the Witch and the Wardrobe, like everything in between, Lord of the Rings, all that shit. It's just a solid blanket term for what is the genre. And, I guess you could call some of it high fantasy like Lord of the Rings, but I hesitate to apply something like that to Deathstalker. I don't think they're the same type of fantasy film at all. One's beer and buff dudes, and the other one is like made up languages and Liv Tyler being fucking hot and Tolkien writing. So I think that there is a lot of difference between a lot of fantasy films, but I think by and large they share in similar elements, which is like world building, stuff that's obviously different to our day-to-day lives and more of a medievally tinged kind of a sword slinging kind of a way, with magic and creatures and all that kind of stuff. So while there are sword and sandal films that I like, that I consider rad, I would not consider them fantasy films. Like Ben-Hur is more of a or Spartacus or things like that, or more in the sword and sandals department, where it's more like a historical period piece than it is fucking Conan, So that's, I guess, how I kind of differentiate it. If it builds this fantastical world that we're supposed to believe in, with these characters typically going on some type of a grand adventure or quest, if there's swords and magic and strange creatures and sorcerers and wizards involved, then to me, that's generally a fantasy film. I don't know. Would you agree?
Yeah, I think so.
There's a lot of these that I selected tonight based on the fact that I just think that they kick ass. And then there's several of them that really do kind of center around a certain theme. And that's movies my uncle showed me when I was a kid. I was always, and always will be predominantly a horror and a science fiction guy. But my love of fantasy comes solely from my Uncle Don. He was always airbrushing like rad fantasy chicks and doing that shit when I was a kid. And he had like the entire Robert E. Howard, like paperback Conan collection. So he had all those Conan novels with like the rad Frank Frazetta artwork on them. And it just, totally informed my taste in things. One of the first films that he showed me as a kid, and one that we got to get out of the way right away when it comes to favorite fantasy films. Well, you're in luck, buddy, because we're going to be talking about those tonight. Spoiler alert. One of the first ones that he showed me, though, and one that you have to have on any, baseline list of this shit, is Conan the Barbarian. So we're going to run the trailer for that right now.
Warrior, thief, gladiator, conqueror, Conan.
They said you had come, a man of great strength. A conqueror.
Let us take the world by the throat and make it give us what we desire.
We'll all drown in lakes of blood.
He's evil, a sorcerer who can summon demons.
Now they will know why they are afraid of the dark. Now they will learn why they fear the night. Out of an age undreamed of comes the most incredible adventurer of all. What daring! What outrageousness! What arrogance! I salute you. Conan the Barbarian.
There it is. That's where it all began for me with the fantasy film. Sadly, Uncle Don is no longer with us, but true story. When he was on his deathbed, in the nerdiest of nerd moves, I did make sure that he had a copy of Conan on hand to watch just in case, And from what I was told, he did, it just captured my imagination right from the get-go. I think it helps too that Conan is a bit of a coming of age story. Kind of starts when he's like a young boy just getting displaced from his village and sold into slavery, and then he becomes like the ultimate personification of what a fucking manly man would have been back then, and goes on quite the quest himself over the events of the film. We got fucking Darth Vader turning into a snake monster. We got, naked tittied witches out in the desert. We've got dudes being strapped to fucking Joshua trees and pecked at by vultures. It's got everything in it that you want an awesome fantasy movie to have. Pit fighting
I got a fondness
scenes.
Not to interrupt you, I got a fondness for Joshua trees and naked titty bitches.
I like Joshua trees when they barbecue ex-cops on them for being racist.
The only time I dislike Joshua trees is when U2 named their album after him.
That also sucked. But that could be said about most of U2's catalog. Though I've heard the earlier stuff.
we'll go there some other time.
Conan, though, speaking of music, I mean, there's probably no score in movie history that instantly makes me want to like cheer and cry like that Conan score. And that was like that even
They
before my
nailed the
uncle passed
score
away.
wise. They nailed that.
They absolutely did. It is one of the most epic pieces of music in cinema. You know, I was
agree.
lucky enough to see that shit like just blaring out of some actual
Yeah.
theater speakers during a, you know, anniversary screening they did some years back, and seeing that movie. The only thing that would have made it better was having my uncle with me to watch that, especially knowing that
That
he would
checks
die
out.
a few years later. But man,
checks out.
was it fucking sick. And I mean, I think Conan, in terms of being like just a character that influenced a lot of fantasy, you can't go much further back than like J.R.R. Tolkien with The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings stuff, and Robert E. Howard with Conan.
For sure.
I mean, they're
For sure.
two of the originators of the genre. So you got to have Conan on a list of favorite fantasy films. Let's see what we got going on in the comments here real quick.
All I can say is for my input, because it's been so long since I've watched Conan, but
all
my
great,
band,
Nolan.
my band Neon Chrome, our one of our main jokes is Arnold. Like Elvis and Arnold is pretty much our jokes. And Arnold is, you know, there's been a big Arnold resurgence, like with I don't know if you're familiar with
Get to the
can't think of the
chopper.
page
Get to the chopper.
no, there's just I can't remember the page name now, but I'll have to look on my phone here in a second. But this guy's been doing Arnold impressions like perfectly, and he's been doing like songs, like he just did Michael Jackson's Man in the Mirror, and I'm like, oh my god, that's fucking amazing.
Hell yeah, that sounds great.
Yeah.
Sounds right up my alley.
Yeah, and I'll send some to you. I got to look up the page name again.
Have you ever listened to Austrian Death Machine?
I have not, sir.
Oh, it's a band, and I'm sure they're sort of like a grindcore, hardcore band, if I remember right. It's been a while since I listened to it. But a whole theme of their first albums was like Arnold shit, and obviously the name Austrian Death Machine is a reference to Arnold Schwarzenegger. So if you want something to check out, give those guys a look. You guys got any history with Conan? Is it a movie that you hold near and dear? Is it?
You know, to be honest, oh, go ahead, Dave.
Go ahead.
I got a lot less history than you do, so I'll just say I've always loved Arnold. I'm just one of those 90s kids who got to go to the video store on, you know, mom's payday every so often. I'd rent the same movie. I rented T2 like multiple times before I even watched T1, but it was just kind of like, you know, I needed to. But long story short, Conan is one of those ones I went and I want. I'm like, all right, that's what cemented this guy as being Arnold. But bottom line, no, dude.
Certainly one of them.
In fact, the fact that I went back and, you know, after I watched it as a kid, I went back and read it, and it's like he didn't know what he was even saying a lot of the times. He was speaking these lines because he was so just, you know, green.
But
very Austrian,
Conan has a lot more depth in the novels or the pulp fiction that Robert E. Howard was writing than we get in the Conan movies. So they're also a great example of what by modern terms would probably be considered, or by modern standards would probably be considered subpar adaptations, you know, because they don't really the character that depth that he has in the books. They skip over a lot of stuff. But who fucking cares when you're like 8 years old, your uncle's over there in the corner after having just airbrushed some hot big fantasy girl and he's like pumping iron while showing you Conan. You know, there's not a part of you that gives a shit if it's like accurate to the novel.
Exactly.
Especially if you've seen the movie that he was in before Conan.
Hercules in New York?
Yeah, Hercules in New York, which is even more cheesier. You know? I mean, there's not that much difference between him and the Wookiee.
So we're getting some strange reports here on secondary texts. You guys can both hear me, correct?
Correct.
Of course.
Can you guys in the comments hear me? Just sound off if you're like a viewer right now and you can actually hear my audio.
I had private chat set so long last time. I had no realization there was private or, you know, comments. So I'm there now.
We got Michael McNally in the house.
Hey, what's up, Michael?
Yeah, just let me know if you guys can hear me in the comments, because we have one viewer
Okay.
reporting to me in private messages.
But yeah,
What's he saying?
I definitely have some history with this movie. It's been a long time since I've seen them, so I definitely need to pull out the double feature and watch them through. In fact, I wouldn't mind comparing them with the new with the last one that Jason Momoa did too. You know, just to compare the two, because you know both Arnold and Jason Momoa, at least at this point in time, are just as muscled and chiseled. You know.
Yeah, I mean, I liked the Jason Momoa Conan. I thought it was all right. I definitely didn't like it as much as the first two Conan movies, but a lot of that's nostalgia. It was also, what a lot of people missed is that it was telling a younger Conan story. Everyone figures, especially really just fans of the two movies that Arnold did, figure that that's the version of Conan that needs to be portrayed. But when you read the Robert E. Howard fiction that he did, where Conan comes from, it bounces around constantly through the chronology of his life. Like, some stories are young Conan, some stories are Conan like we see him in the first two movies. Some of them are old man Conan, when he's already become a barbarian king and he's having the last adventures in his twilight years. I mean, it spans a wide spectrum of storytelling with Conan that isn't necessarily captured in the films, and the Momoa movie was their attempt to go and like do a young Conan story, assuming everybody was hip with the fact that these jump around in his life,
Yeah.
What were you
It's
gonna
kind
say,
of like
Josh?
to me, two things. It's kind of like the what's his name? Who the fuck is that guy? That UFC fighter? I'm having a brain fart. Conor McGregor. It's kind of like his version of Roadhouse. It really doesn't need to exist if I
Sure.
don't want it to exist.
Exactly.
But two things.
Nobody's stopping you from just watching the old ones,
Two things. The drummer of my band is tuned in right now. I sent the link to my band. And Logan, what's up, buddy? Love you, dude. Glad you're tuned in. Him and his lovely lady Aaron are watching
what's
right
up,
now.
Logan?
Logan and Aaron, we love you, man. But yeah, no,
you
Conor
guys need to
McGregor.
get something laid down so that we can start sharing some of the music on here. I said that last time. I'll say it again.
I think I told you a little bit last time. Yeah, we're in the process of saving up to get a proper studio recording. We don't want to go in and half-ass anything. That ain't gonna be what Neon Chrome does. So when we go in and do it, we're gonna, you pay for what you get at the end of the day, and we're looking to.
You don't want to release a
everything.
self-produced live album called Live and Inaudible? That sounds like
we actually already have Sleaze at the Bees, which is a live show from Johnny B's that sounds surprisingly good. But after that, no, we all decided. I just go to those guys and be like, hey, this is what we want to do, what I want us to do. I have high standards for us, so it's pretty much,
So
when we go into the studio for the first time,
is that something we can listen to?
It's literally my drummer Logan, who's watching right now. Logan, bless your fucking heart. But he put his phone down during our first show and hit record. And what he came out with from his cell phone surprised me with how okay it sounded,
Oh, yeah. Actually, weirdly, even though I don't have any like film production experience, I do have some production experience of miking, venues and recording live performances. So, one day maybe we'll have to do something like that just for fun. I'd love to whip out the old
Neon Chrome needs to get up to Ben.
That, and you guys really need to look into doing a more northeastern tour of the Northwest. You don't got to go to fucking Idaho, but
northeastern tour. Hold on. My stoned asses. Excuse me, my crossfade.
I'm talking like Wenatchee, Washington, Richland, Washington.
Oh, okay. So you're not the Northwest, but you're the northeastern of the Northwest.
Yeah, I'm in Northeast Oregon, so I go. Most of my shows, unless I'm going to travel.
To you, the Pacific Northwest isn't. To you, the Pacific Northwest is like way too fucking far away.
It
isn't, but it is sometimes, especially Southern Oregon and places like that. It's like 8 hours for me to drive to you, or I'd be hanging out.
I got a question for you. Mo.
Shoot.
Just because I was telling you earlier, I really don't have much to offer to this genre, but I don't know if you can see
Was
with
that
my.
Red
There we
Steel?
go. Steel
Or
Dawn.
Steel Dawn, I mean.
Steel Dawn. Yeah, Steel Dawn.
Yeah, baby.
My background's
Hold
fucked
on.
up because I don't have a green screen, but
I have
Hold
that
up.
copy.
Yeah, check it. Bam.
does
Keep
that
it
qualify? Would you say that qualifies as, fantasy, I guess? Because to me, that was,
Yeah. I would say that's fantasy.
I was just telling Mo Dave earlier that I'm like, I don't have a lot of experience in like fantasy movies. I mean, to me, fantasy movies are like, obviously this one, but I mean, The Wizard, that's like every kid's fantasy.
Yeah, I can see that. I would
The
have to
Masters of
say
the Universe,
fantasy.
that's about all I got.
Dragonheart is a fantasy movie. Anything dealing with the Dragonheart stuff.
Mo bumped his power button. He'll be back.
Yeah, I kind of figured that.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Fantasy is not just a boxed in genre of
Over the top, like, weird fantasy,
like
I know I use the term in the sense, but I mean it's not always over the top. It's always just to me fantasy means Little Monsters. It's a fantasy movie if you want to think about it.
it's a fantasy / horror movie, and
Yeah.
and yeah, it is.
It fits in all those ranges, to me. That's what I was telling him earlier. I'm like,
movie to
yeah.
me. Little Monsters is nostalgic too.
I was just, like I said, I was telling Mo, I'm like, I don't know if I know a lot of fantasy movies, but I'll jump in anyway and, offer my input. But when I think of Steel Dawn, I'm like, that's kind of a fantasy,
Yeah, that is Mad Max. Those are considered fantasy.
Yes, sir.
Well, they're kind of like action fantasy, futuristic type, more towards the science fiction aspect. Indiana Jones, those are fantasy.
That's okay. That checks out because, like I said,
to me, I think Indiana Jones is fantasy, even though they're technically action films. They're in the fantasy realm.
It falls into I guess. I mean, maybe I'm wrong here. Correct me if I'm wrong, but Indiana Jones at the time fell into I guess it took place years before the movies got released. But to me, fantasy is kind of like a current movie that gives an alternate take on. I don't know. Like I said, I don't have a lot of experience in fantasy genre, if you will.
Yeah. Well.
It's like Garth when he got left alone on Wayne's World. Well, we'll keep it going. I'm going to exit full screen mode and see if I can't connect with some of the people that are in the comment section here. Well, this is quite awkward. The newest guy, and I'm the only one here. Hot damn.
So I don't know where Josh just went. I'm back now, but I had like some unfortunate technical difficulties in that I did not know that this keyboard that I had like a power button that I fat fingered as soon as I showed him that Steel Dawn Blu-ray. So right now I'm currently just trying to get booted back up here.
Oh, there I am. Can you hear me?
Weird. You back in, Dave? Did it kick all of us? Or
I've been back. Back. I've been trying to talk for quite some time. I don't know why I wasn't.
that was weird. I think I did like a stupid thing, and it just happened to line up with also a technical StreamYard issue or something. But as I was explaining, pretty much this keyboard that I picked up to show him that fucking Steel Dawn Blu-ray had a power button that I fat fingered, so my entire PC shut down on me. But you know,
Sorry, I saw him leave, and I was. I swear I was talking, but I guess he couldn't hear me, and then he said, "I guess I'm the only one in the room. This is weird." And then he left.
yeah, I think Josh had some issues, so he had to reset as well.
Partners, I got some fucking issues, but you know, I went and saw a guy, laid on the couch, and talked about it for a bit, and here I am.
We're getting it going again. So you had asked me a question, though. I think I might have time to answer that before I'm back on from the PC here. So, what were you saying, Josh? Do you remember? Do you recall?
He was saying, and this is my quote, that he has been he's very low man on the totem pole as far as knowing fantasy films.
And there's nothing wrong with that.
Exactly.
I think
I was telling him.
you've
And I
probably
was
seen a
trying to
lot
say
more
something
than you
about
realize.
like Indiana Jones is like in that category type.
Well, I was telling Dave, I'm like, fuck, for my fucking sake, The Wizard's a fucking fantasy movie for me, because that's like every fucking young dude's fantasy to go on the road and run away and play video games and win doing it.
I don't know if my fantasy is to go on a road trip with an autistic kid and get bullied by a guy that thinks the Power Glove is fucking cool, but I get what you're saying. It's a bit like Rain Man for guys that like Mario, and that's fine, but
they saw a lot of the country.
They sure did.
I guess, and nobody had to travel with Tom Cruise, so that, like, in itself is.
That's also true. I'm pretty sure that's how you end up becoming a Scientologist.
Exactly.
Would return to
you start
Oz
jumping on couches, going, "She's the greatest in the world."
Yeah, honestly, you know, my comment about going on a road trip with an autistic guy shouldn't be taken the way that it probably sounds. I've done that several times, and it was fine. I think the lack of Tom Cruise is what made it fine, though.
I get what you're saying, brother.
All right, I think we're just about booted up here, folks. Sorry for the delay. We got 5 more films that we're going to be presenting to you here. So, yeah. Got to log back in from the PC.
I was just messaging my drummer's lovely lady to see if they were still in the feed, because they're like, everybody's back, but you're gone. And I'm like,
I think it might have been this Aaron Hall girl. I don't know if that.
Yeah, Aaron Hall. That
she just said crickets, and then we hit that dead patch there. So.
Aaron Hall is my drummer, Logan Weiss's lovely lady, and God, I love them so fucking much. My band family, it's the best ever. Like I said, everybody kind of comes in, and it's like it takes a village type thing.
Oh, of course. Yeah, we were having a good long conversation about independent DIY type artwork and art in general before we got in here, and it really does, man. It's not quite the same if you don't have other people with other influences involved in it.
For sure.
I think that's a big part of what made this show pop off for a little bit the way that it was that I had, so many my other co-hosts involved. What the hell is that clattering? You settle down
I
with
have
that,
no idea. No idea.
Yeah, it's like other influences and other elements to the creative process
For
make
sure.
a big difference, So just having yourself as the only person that's contributing anything tends to make for a bit of a stale product, which is why I'd like to include people in the shit that I do. Hold on, I'm about to be back in there right now, boy.
Hey, I'm gonna go check out my dog real quick. I'll be right back. I got a husky. She's very emotional and very needy, and it's like worse than a partner sometimes.
Understandable.
All right, I should be back on this end. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you. I don't know why, but I'm still hearing some clattering. I don't know whether it's on my end or your end or.
It could have been mine, I am back though, and I just got to fix my camera right here, and we're good to go. 13th Warrior though is a hell of a fucking recommendation, JR. I absolutely loved that movie. It was one that I watched frequently for years, actually. That was like a regular revisit for me on the weekends, was to throw that in with a friend who hadn't seen it. I do think that, oh shit, dude, the clattering's definitely coming from you, Dave. Hate to say it, but
Okay, well,
I'm back.
you might just have to unplug the old microphone, and plug it back in.
Dave, quit clattering, man. I hear you up on my rooftop. Click, click, click.
Yeah, we hit just a wall of technical difficulties here. From the looks of it too, there's someone in the chat might have brought on some of that fucking bad juju, but we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. Yeah, you ever see 13th Warrior with Antonio Banderas? That movie was fucking sick, dude. Where he is
I guess I'm the only guy. I'm the only other guy in here right now, so I'm gonna have to tell you no.
Well,
do not tell Antonio Banderas. I never seen it because
he's like a Middle Eastern dude, right?
How is Antonio Banderas in Middle Eastern?
Hollywood, bro. Fucking John Wayne.
Fucking Hollywood, man. It blows my mind.
John Wayne played Genghis Khan once. Just say that a couple of times.
I'm well aware of that, and that whole thing just kind of I try to forget it. Kind of like the 2009 Nightmare on Elm Street.
A whole fucking debacle. But Antonio Banderas is this Middle Eastern dude, ends up having to live with some Vikings for a while, and he's an accomplished swordsman with a scimitar, but ends up shaving it down into sort of a Viking scimitar, and they have to fight like these crazy bear people that are attacking their fucking, village or whatever. So he has to, it's sort of like Dances with Wolves with Middle Eastern dude meets Vikings, and he has to band together with them to ward off a threat. It's fucking sick, dude. Honestly, if this were to go on for a while longer until we hit some of those like 90s and 2000s films, 13th Warrior will definitely be featured on a favorite fantasy flicks segment in the future. Okay. Maybe we will talk, Jack, but I don't know if this is the venue right now. If you want to just talk about the movies with us, that's fine. But I don't know if we should sort that out in the comment section of my stream, with all due respect. So it's, we'll get it, but I'll get with you. I'm willing to give anyone a second chance. So, but right now we have to talk about the second film in our favorite fantasy films lineup. And it kind of is sort of playing off of the Robert E. Howard, Frank Frazetta theme of Conan the Barbarian, and that is Ralph Bakshi's Fire and Ice. This one does not get talked enough about nowadays. It's one of those rare animated fantasy epics from the 1980s. So let's take a little look at that trailer right there, and then we'll talk a little bit about it.
In an age of myth and legend, the world trembles before the power of Necron, master of evil, ruler of ice. Against him stand Tigra, princess of Firekeep and captive of the ice demons. Larn, Tigra! Last of a mighty warrior tribe, and her only hope of escape, and Dark Wolf, mysterious avenger and sworn enemy of the Ice Tyrant. Their courage will be tested. The challenge must be met. The final battle between the armies of the cold and the keepers of the flame is about to begin. Fire and Ice, from the visual imagination of Ralph Bakshi and the dazzling artistry of Frank Frazetta. A fantasy adventure from 20th Century Fox.
There it is, baby. Fire and Ice. Ralph Bakshi, for those uninitiated, was the fellow that did Fritz the Cat. He also did the Lord of the Rings animated movie that came out back in the day. Regrettably, did not get a sequel. Still kind of bummed about that. Yeah, just an amazing mind behind some truly unique animated films. Wizards is another one that will show up in future segments.
Bro, that's an animated one, correct?
Yeah.
I got a funny story about that. Never seen it in its entirety, but went to the local video store up the road for me one night when I was a kid, just on a random kid night, to decided I want to watch The Wizard. Well, what did the video store send me home with? Wizards.
Wizards, fucking epic mistake, dude. A lot better than getting that.
I'll tell you right now, my dumbass
Jim Carrey one.
My dumbass didn't appreciate it at the time. I went back and got The Wizard because I wanted to watch fucking Fred Savage and his little autistic little brother fucking win the Nintendo shit. But yeah, no, I remember that to this day because I'm like, this isn't The Wizard. This is
Wizards. Yeah,
something called Wizard.
There's more than one wizard in this thing.
I'm like, this is Fred the Gnome, but like, cool.
Oh, dude, I love Wizards.
David the Gnome.
To be honest, even if I were to put together like a top 5 animated features list of just all-time animated features, Wizards would be on it for sure.
No, you triggered a whole like nostalgia thing in my head just now, right?
A little core memory going on there, huh?
I'm like, oh shit, that's from that wrong VHS tape got rented to me from Video Villa.
Oh, dude, eventually we're going to do like an epic animations month for classic cuts, and Wizards will be involved. We'll have to get you in there.
I'm going to have to watch that whole thing in between that, and I want to get in on that because, like I said, I got my whole connection to that movie is that mistaken rental, and I'm just like, fuck that rental because I wanted to watch Fred Savage.
Right. And I feel that, that was my experience, like I mentioned, with, you remember that movie Mask with Cher? And
oh, yeah. And you
about the Rocky Dennis kid. Yeah. We were trying to rent The Mask, and my parents brought that home, and that was kind of fucked up. I do love the movie Mask a lot, poor Rocky Dennis. But, man, did I want to watch Jim Carrey instead.
I'll tell you right now, dude, there's another funny story I have is, let me turn my screen here. I stayed the night at a friend's house for this is a teenage, I can't tell you how old I was. It was some mid-teenage, sleepover. We're all doing a thing. He's like, hey, Brian, I brought this Howard Stern tape home. And it was literally a documentary about Howard Stern.
Oh, well, there you go. That's not the same thing at all, though, bud.
No, he's like, I got this Howard Stern tape. Like, all right, let's watch this. We all watch this Howard Stern tape. We're like,
this is going to be
what
hilarious.
What the fuck is this shit?
Yeah, it turns out it's just the story of a really miserable Jewish guy from New York that
fucking A, dude. No, we were all horribly disappointed. I remember he look on this dude's face. I felt bad because he was like the birthday boy, and I'm like,
even before most people hated Howard Stern for being liberal or whatever. I don't know. It seems like a dumb reason to hate a silly celebrity, but he was just not that cool outside of the context of his fucking show, man. I mean, I liked
honestly, yeah,
of Howard Stern, but I had no desire to fucking hang around listening to those people outside of the show. And JR is right. Mask was kind of depressing.
What's up, Dave?
Definitely not the feel-good movie we were expecting.
Got a call from my lady wife.
Liquor Moon brings up Cool World and American Pop, both fucking great. Country says he still needs to see this movie. It looks awesome. He remembers when when he saw Wizard for the first time, it flew over my head. When I was older, I got it and made me appreciate it all the more. And that is true. It's got some deep themes in it and some, parallels between the industrialization of the world and Nazi Germany and things like way heavy stuff that they're bringing into like an animated thing, which Ralph Bakshi was kind of known for doing. But man, is it fucking just perfection when it comes to blend fantasy and sci-fi. And like, I don't know, if you were to go beyond the Fallout reality, I feel like we eventually come into the Final Fantasy VI Wizards realm of sci-fi fantasy. And I just love it so much, right down to even like the narrator lady. And Jack accurately pointed out that there is some Masters of the Universe vibes in Fire and Ice. Fire and Ice, really, if you grew up seeing the Frank Frazetta paintings, is pretty much what happens if you bring a Frank Frazetta painting to life, is Fire and Ice. And they did it with such cool old retro effects like rotoscoping and things like that.
They called it
where they
rotary, if I remember correctly.
Rotoscoping. Rotary is a whole different thing, Dave. Rotoscoping is where you film a scene live action and then animate over top of the live action frames. So that's why all the movement in Fire and Ice and everything, up to and including the titties, looks really good. Good fantasy flick, I would say, is the movie Dragon Slayer. Really, really good choice.
Yeah.
Also one that will be showing up in a future segment of this. And then JR says, Stern is a snob. Never really got into his stuff at all. And to be honest, even as a lifelong, well, not lifelong because it started sucking years ago, but as a devotee of the Howard Stern show back in the day, I'll say this much. Howard was like the last reason you were listening to the show. It was all the crazy cast of other characters. I mean, Howard pretty much just sat back there saying snarky, miserable stuff all the time and trying to be funny in a way that never really clicked with me. The other talent that he had around the show, even fucking David Duke or whatever that guy from the Ku Klux Klan was funnier than fucking Howard Stern on any of his appearances. I mean, and I don't agree with that guy at all. I think he's a piece of shit. But I'd rather listen to fucking him talk with Robin than listen to Howard have any attempt at banter with any of the people in there. The guy was
Howard just comes in like
miserable.
Howard just comes in like ha 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 penis.
He was good at surrounding himself with offensive, crazy people that made for good content. The guy himself was a fucking wet noodle. Like, there's no reason to really listen to him on his own. Beetlejuice made Howard Stern, if you ask me. Yeah, him and the rest of Backpack. And,
yeah.
I mean, there's so many fucked up episodes of Howard Stern I remember finding hilarious as a kid. Dude, one of a pivotal moment in Howard Stern for me that really, you know, sort of put society into perspective was the one where they had like some adult film star or a stripper on there, and the whole game was if they could like get pieces of bologna to stick to her butt cheeks. And that was one of those moments in the 90s or early 2000s, whenever it happened, where I was like, maybe there is something to some of these what some of these parent groups are saying about the shit we're watching. You know, like I've just been sat here for 35 minutes.
Why do we want bologna to stick to these women's butt cheeks?
I've been sat here for 35, 40 minutes watching these guys try to stick lunch meat to a stripper's butt. I mean, maybe we are rotting our brains. It sure feels good while you're doing it, but.
My mom would be like, why are you wasting so much fucking food?
It is a good waste of bologna. I hope they fried some of it up afterwards.
I was just saying, we are a 90s. Me and you are 90s kids. You know, we were raised on bologna.
Yes, I still eat bologna, dude. Cut a few slices down the middle of that shit, fry it up, put it on some nice toasted bread with some mustard, maybe some grilled onions. You're in for a treat. That's what I'm saying.
2 seconds, I'll be right back.
We have to get to another pivotal. Well, we're gonna go ahead and wait for him, but another pivotal film for me here as our next title. One that kind of, you know, shared the same space as in my head as Conan for a lot of years. I'm sure some of you guys in the comments will be able to guess the film right away because it's kind of a staple. Jack says, not gonna lie, his complete transformation of being the most hated person on radio, turning into becoming one of the most valued guys on TV and podcasts is an amazing accomplishment. Sure, you know, if you're fine with your show being an absolute fucking snooze while you accomplish that stuff, I'm with it. I much prefer the days where serial killers were calling into Howard Stern. You know, that was content worth listening to.
I literally
Do I
watched
wanna
that less
listen-
than a week ago, and I'm like, holy shit.
Oh, Clay the
this
Serial
is
Killer
radio.
was legendary. We got a comment here that'll be up your alley, Josh.
Oh, Country Shake,
Country
bro.
says Masters of the Universe live action gets a bad rap, but he loves Frank Langella's performance as Skeletor. I love almost everything about that fucking movie, dude.
Oh, Master.
Do I love it as a He-Man product? Maybe not, but as like a kick-ass canon movie from the 80s that absolutely hit all the marks of good sci-fi fantasy for me, Masters of the Universe fucking rules. I've never shown that to a group of people where they all didn't enjoy it, you know?
No, Frank Langella nailed that role.
Jack says he's talking about the journey, but the serial killer stuff was epic. I mean, I don't know, man. Howard is kind of loved now for being like a left-wing fucking personality. If their entire personality these days is wrapped around some sort of political position, I don't really consider them a beloved celebrity in the same way I consider celebrities that we all just love,
bro.
you know?
I don't care what side you're on. If you align yourself
Everybody
completely
took
with
a
one
side
sort of
and
political party, you're alienating yourself from so many things that you're gonna miss, and so many things that are gonna miss you.
And most of it has nothing to fucking do with them. Howard Stern has so much fucking money, that guy's never going to face any of the consequences the rest of us regular people face by existing in a world dictated by these politicians.
The only political statement I will make tonight.
We're not usually about politics over here. It's not a thing.
The right wing and the left wing are they're both part of the same bird. A bird's got a both right wing and left wing. So
either way, we're flying the dick of the bird, and I'm
we're flying ourselves straight. We're flying ourselves straight to hell.
We're flying ourselves straight into this fucking trailer right here, and that's for an absolute
These
classic.
nuts.
That's 1982's Beastmaster.
It was foretold by witches. It was conceived through sorcery. And it was to be destroyed by all that is evil. But the courage of one mortal saved it. And so, into an age of darkness, in a time of mysticism, sacrifice, and plunder, there came the only light, the Beastmaster. Born with the strength of a black tiger, the courage of the eagle, the power that made him more than any hero. More than any lover. He was lord and master over all beasts. He was the Beastmaster. Behold the wonder, the horror, the fantasy, the challenge of the one warrior they called the Beastmaster. Mark Singer is Dar. Tanya Roberts is Carrie. Rip Torn is Mayak. John Amos is Seth. Together they take us on a fascinating journey back into unexplored times. Conquer your fears. Face the unknown. And discover the incredible link between man, animal, and all that is phantasmagorical. In the world of Dungeons, Dragons, and Dar. The Beastmaster. The epic adventure of a new kind of hero.
Listen. Oh, where'd you guys go? No one's on camera anymore? What the fuck is this?
Hey, buddy.
Listen. Bold move at the end there, drawing the parallel between Dungeons and Dragons and the movie. I think that's great. Beastmaster is kind of, in terms of live action, fantasy shit that we've talked about, Beastmaster is right up there with Conan of being like a formative film for me. I mean, it has everything that you want in fantasy movies with it. It's got buff, sweaty dudes. It's got scantily clad witches. It's got like fucking Batman sucking their juices out of their body and discarding their bones. People bubbling out of fucking cauldrons. Animal companions. True story. I played fucking EverQuest with a guy named Poto for 8 years and always assumed that he was a fan of Beastmaster. So I would reference it for like all of those 8 years. And then it turned out towards the end, he had no fucking clue what I was talking about because EverQuest just auto-generated that name for him. But I thought he chose the name for his druid based on one of the fucking ferrets from Beastmaster. So there was like 8 years of what I thought were inside jokes that this guy just
Those
politely
ferrets
was
were
not
awesome.
acknowledging, you know?
He was just trying to be cool.
Yeah, he was just being chill and not acknowledging that he didn't get what the fuck I was talking about.
He's
for
like, yeah,
almost a decade.
yeah.
What a dick. I'll remember that forever, Poto. He's still a friend with me on Facebook, too, so he might see this. Listen, okay. Country says, I remember this one. Loved it. Thought it kind of felt weird since the redhead's dad was Dar's dad, too. But hey, different time, different rules, you know? Probably different state, too. I don't know. I don't know where it was filmed. Yeah, Red Sonja is still king to me, but I do love a good ginge. Phantasmagorical too. You know, it's one of those words that just kind of means crazy and weird and insane, if I remember right. Let's look up the definition together because that's fun.
Mm-hmm.
And to answer your question, Jody, yes, I will beat Bologna off your butt because I like a good bit of lunch meat play.
What?
That's what we're all about over here. I'm getting comments on my phone too from people that are.
Oh, okay. I was like, wait a minute, nobody asked me to get bologna off their butt. Not that I would.
Well, you
I'm
hang around this show long enough, bro, you'll probably fucking. That's pretty much exactly what I said, Jack. It's characterized by fantastic imagery and incongruous juxtapositions. So just random, weird, crazy, you know, fantasy, sci-fi insanity. That's pretty much what phantasmagorical means, but they spell it with a PH because they're fancy. Beastmaster fucking rules. The sequel, not so much. But everything about that first Beastmaster movie, up to and including its big ass giant oversized fucking VHS case, which if I wasn't so paranoid about accidentally hitting the power button on my PC again, I would grab.
If you ever get to see,
awesome.
If you ever get to see something of Mark Singer outside of Beastmaster, check out his version of The Taming of the Shrew. It is
also check him out in V, because he's one of the main characters in that series, and it kicks ass. This movie is the reason why every time I see Mark Singer in anything, I always and forever will refer to him as Mark Singer, the Beastmaster. I don't ever simply call him Mark Singer, because that's a disrespectful fucking slight against his legacy, bro. You got to mention Beastmaster every time you mention Mark Singer. So he is, to me, Mark Singer, the Beastmaster. That's just how it works. You ever see this movie, Josh? Oh shit, he stepped away right as I asked that question. I don't know. What are your thoughts on the sequel there, Dave? Oh, he's back. You ever see this movie, Josh?
Sorry. Which one?
Beastmaster.
Beastmaster, baby.
No, I ain't gonna lie. That's one I've guilty of not seeing. I've heard of it many times, but I've not watched it.
Fuck yeah, you're getting quite the education tonight then.
No, tonight I'm like watching all these trailers like, oh, shit. Hell yeah.
Well, so of the three, you've seen Conan, but what are your thoughts on the other two in general? Are they movies that you figure you need to be checking out soon? I imagine they'd make for good inspiration for some metal songs as well.
Beastmaster right there. That's an inspiration for a song that I don't even know that we've even written yet, but it's gonna happen.
Well, check out how 80s this is, dude. In the second one, he gets
the Master of the Beast or something like that. I don't know.
Actually, if I remember right, in the second one, this is how 80s it is. Like a chick and her Camaro get transported into his world, and then he comes into the future with them. You know, so as a goofy, shitty movie, the sequel does rule. It's not as good as this first one.
You blow my mind with some cheesy ass shit that I'm just like, oh, why aren't they doing more of that? We need more
can you just
Camaros getting
imagine
blown
like
into the future.
badass fantasy chick laid across the Camaro with this dude like holding a sword or something, like it's
Here I go again on my own.
that needs to be like a neon chrome fucking album cover. Country
And
Says
I'm on
Legends.
the cover of the neon chrome. That's all I got.
Legend Country Says Legend starring Tom Cruise is a good fantasy movie. It will be showing up in a future segment to this because I love Legend. The Tangerine cut of the film is the better one because the music is better. And there's a lot of people that do seem to share that opinion when it comes to the different cuts of Legend. I've got that DVD set that they did with like the clear, it's a weird set. My girlfriend.
Oh yeah, that's the UK edition.
It's sick. It's got like both cuts of the film and like
Yeah.
cool, like a cool supplemental book and everything like that. It's a dope set for the movie. If you love Legend, it's one that I highly recommend getting because you got both cuts of the film and everything.
It's like Legend the Ultimate Edition.
Yeah, that's what it's called. Yep. Great movie. Not Beastmaster though.
Funny. It's funny how movies get released and then DVDs come and gone, and it's pretty much the VHS of today. But
it's still very
in a lot of ways, yeah.
in my mind.
Oh no, I still love it. Don't get me wrong, but I mean, what I'm getting at is my DVD copy of Dawn of the Dead is not going to top anything that I'm ever going to find today until they redo it, because I literally have that definitive collection,
right,
where it's like the original theatrical European and extended cut.
I'm still listening.
Now you're all good, but you just talking about how movies like they include everything, and to me that's like the definitive collection of any movie whatsoever. It's literally the original, the extended, the European, and then the one the director wanted everybody to see. 4 different movies.
I know the set you're talking about, and I agree. That is one of the most comprehensive DVD sets that is out there.
I remember when I paid. I think I paid $78 for it, brand new on DVD. It was worth it because now it's like I said, it's you ain't gonna find it anymore unless you. Yeah, exactly.
I ended up paying for mine used $13.99.
Hell yeah!
And that's good. That's good fortune for you, man. You probably earned it by just buying so many movies. I think there's a lot to be said about modern stuff, even though obviously there's a lot of gripes about the retro ways going their way, but we've never been blessed with more like retro movie content now with like the best supplemental material and behind the scenes.
Everybody's buying up licenses for all these random ass movies, and it's the greatest fucking thing ever.
The fact that Steel Dawn even has like a deluxe Blu-ray edition that I had to turn the power of my PC off for is pretty fucking cool. Like I never really watched that movie. To your question though, I have not seen it yet. I just bought it because I collect.
My dad is one of those. I showed him when I'm like, "Hey, Dad, I own this." He's like, "We gotta watch that," and he was all about watching it. And my dad's all about a lot of things, but when he's like that much, he was like, "We need to watch this." I'm like, "Okay, let's watch this." And I remember the blonde guy. I'm like, "I've seen that guy. He's in some Walker Texas Ranger episodes," and it's just funny.
I believe right before I got kicked too, someone had mentioned them remaking Highlander and Momoa possibly being a good Kurgan, and I could see that.
It must have been Dave.
It wasn't one of you guys. It was in the comments, but like,
okay,
I could see that. And honestly, I don't know. I'm so desensitized with remakes anymore because they've just done so many of them that like if it's cool, then I'm about it. If it sucks,
they're gonna do them, and we just need to kind of like step aside and let them do them because otherwise we're just gonna get offended. Like I'm not gonna lie, the whole remake of Roadhouse, I'm like, why is that necessary?
Yeah, as soon as I heard about it,
Swayze's jeans were tight enough. His kicks were tight enough. Sam Elliott, that says enough right there. What do you need to redo?
I agree.
The double douche.
Country brings up a good point. Cull does rule. I'll never forget the first time that I ever encountered Call of the Conqueror. It was actually somehow the first time I had ever, as a kid, encountered the word conqueror. And for some reason, when I was trying to say it to my uncle once, I called it Call of the Conquenker. And he never let that go for like 20 years. Call the Conquenker is what I'll always know it as, but Call rules. In a lot of ways, Call is cooler than Conan, because he would get involved in like badass swashbuckling adventures sometimes too on the high seas and things like that. I read a lot of Pulp Fiction through my uncle as a kid, so lots of this old stuff I've actually read more of than like modern fantasy, you know. I've read so many goddamn random like one-shot Conan stories that were printed in some magazine in like 1956. It's insane, dude, you know. But I couldn't tell you what happened in, you know, the last 10 years of Spider-Man comics.
Would the movie Krull fall into the fantasy realm?
You shut your absolute mouth. That's our next film on the list, bro. It's
shit.
Krull. Because I'm just actually moving these around totally out of order of what I was doing. So the actual ones that were supposed to be the first two have been pushed down to the last two. But we'll talk about Krull, baby. Look at this thing.
On a distant planet, a great kingdom was ravaged by beings who came from the future to conquer the universe. Now, the only survivors follow a doubtful seer and a throneless king.
They will hold her in the Black Fortress. You must have help.
Thieves, bandits, fighters and brawlers. Desperate men. Those are the kind of men I need. Well, you heard him. We are now an army.
At the end of an impossible journey, they must fight an invincible enemy.
Here's the knowledge you seek.
I shall be your king.
In the fortress, you will face more than the slayers.
What is about to happen to them could never have happened on Earth. Columbia Pictures presents a world apart from anything you have seen before. Krull.
I mean, what do you think of that, Josh, assuming you haven't seen it?
I need to watch it.
In my heart of hearts, Krull is pretty much what I always wanted Star Wars A New Hope to be, right? Like you get all these promises of cool things in A New Hope.
It just looked like paradise.
Cool things
when there wasn't war. It looked like paradise when there wasn't war.
Right. I mean, it's like the movie's super chill, but then you get Krull and it's just full of like crazy action, and it leans very much more into the fantasy elements of the film, which is why it's included.
No,
there's
for sure.
Some people that could say Krull is a cheat, okay, because it's sci-fi fantasy. It's not just fantasy. But I would argue that Krull leans so hard to the side of fantasy that the sci-fi stuff really is.
Plus, the original cover of the VHS just looks so epic.
It is pretty crazy. I love too how Krull kind of our first few here have been very much in the epic fantasy realm of it, where it's like just presenting you an idea in a world and you're kind of living in the vibe of it. You know what I mean? There's not a central quest. It's not built, despite Beastmaster's fucking claim to the D&D throne. It's not built on that quest aspect of fantasy. You know, Krull right here is where we really hit what like gets me super into fantasy movies, is where you're forming your party of characters that are going to go on this specific quest together. You know, it feels like a video game, and that's also what makes Krull awesome. And the next couple of selections on our list, there, you know, you can, one part of the fantasy film is definitely building that that world and that vibe that you want to live in that feels adjacent to your own, but not in like a spacey futuristic way. And as you saw from the trailer, Krull still builds that even with like laser guns and things being layered over the top of it. It feels much closer to Conan than it does to fucking Flash Gordon. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Most definitely.
Country says, I seek the widow of the web, love Krull. The glaive was cool weapon, such like Masters of the Universe, a great blend of the mystical and science fiction. I would agree. I think Krull is probably one of the most masterful examples of that. Plenty have tried, not many have succeeded in making sci-fi fantasy in the way that Krull did, you know. So kudos to him. Any other thoughts on Krull before we go?
No, sir.
Oh, I have some soft love for Krull myself. It's just that much of a cheesy yet somewhat salivating adventure film that I think it goes into some dark places with the right touches. So.
Yep, and it does kaiju-sized monsters and really cool sets in a way that you just don't get in movies anymore, you know?
Most definitely.
It's a lost art, that. So, on to the next trailer. Oh, what's up?
I think I'm going to hill and bounce out. I got to work in the morning, and like I said, I just don't
Bro,
wanna...
we got 2 trailers left. If you can make
really?
it through the rest of the
I'm gonna manage 2 trailers then. Here we go. Hold on.
And these are the best, honestly, some of the cream of the crop right here. So
cream of the crop, yeah.
Next up, playing into that D&D, quest party element, we got Hawk the Slayer, baby.
Enough! 2 blood brothers out for each other.
You have found the power which is rightly mine. How?
The firstborn brother, they called him Voltan.
Enter, Dark One.
The devil's agent, the servant of evil.
Kill him!
The second-born brother, they called him Hawk. He had one secret weapon, the ancient power of the Sword of Mind, and he was out for revenge.
Last thing you will ever see is the woman you love in my arms.
I am ready.
2 brothers, 2 armies, 2 forces of good and evil. Voltan's army, the Devil's army, and Hawk's. A dwarf. A giant. An elfin bowman. A witch. And Hawk. Together, they took on the mighty Voltan. Together, they took on the Devil's agent. 2 blood brothers, with only blood between them. Beyond the edge of darkness, there is a world of sword and sorcery.
Goddamn straight, Country. You definitely need to add that to your list of movies to see. Joshua, you get your ass back here. This
I'm here.
is
No,
something
sorry.
we need to talk about.
My drummer is apparently watching with his lady still, and they sent me a very flattering video that cracked me the hell up.
Hell yeah. So what are your thoughts on Hawk the Slayer, man? What do you think about that shiz right there? That's definitely a movie you need to be seeing.
I'll tell you right now, it just goes on with the rest of them. That's a video I need to go in there and watch.
Do you ever think in your whole life
how I have not seen it before? It's blowing my mind. I've missed out on way too much.
Hawk the Slayer kind of falls under the radar, you know? Like, I thought I knew about all those sort of movies as a kid, and I didn't find out about Hawk the Slayer till I was, like, junior year of high school from a random friend of mine whose dad was, like, a D&D dork that used to rent it a lot back in the day. So he made me a
for sure.
of it. It is leaning into that D&D thing. Absolutely the hardest of any film that we've watched tonight. See, and that's sort of why it was placed in the list. You know, you've got your movies like...
Yes, sir.
Go ahead,
thanks
Dave.
to you, Mo, we were able to talk about it on our podcast.
We did a pretty good episode on Hawk the Slayer for Inside Movies Galore. So go ahead and search that out if you ever want to hear us talk about it. But like Country said, Hawk leans heavily into the D&D thing, which is why it's on the list. Like, if you look how we started this list, even though we randomized it a bit, it still worked out serendipitously so we could make this point. Conan, you know, Fire and Ice, fucking Beastmaster, those are all leaning into like the Pulp Fiction sort of origins of fantasy fiction, you know. But by the time you get to Hawk the Slayer and by extension Krull and shit like that, like Krull very much has that D&D Final Fantasy, you know, classic create a party of characters, have them go on a quest fantasy vibe.
For sure.
So this is where you're entering into the realm where fantasy isn't just informed by the Pulp Fiction mags and stories that were being published back in the day, and it's also informed by other parts of pop culture like video games and tabletop RPGs, and I think that that's pretty fucking sweet. You know,
I still want
it's
that
like
sword.
Such a cool transitional period in fantasy films when they're starting to incorporate stuff like that. Ty Lord says, did you guys already talk about the Sword and Sorcerer or Gore? Not yet. Future episodes. Tonight we have done Conan, we did Krull, we did Beastmaster, Hawk the Slayer. What else did we do?
Oh, hell.
Oh, god damn it. Conan the Barbarian as well. Or Fire and Ice.
Hey!
But our final film is one that I think a lot of people kind of know about, but then a lot of people also weirdly overlooked and just never fucked with as kids, which I think is bizarre because like the people we see in it were in all sorts of other movies that we fucking watched constantly. But that movie is, of course, 1985's Lady Hawk. So this is the final film of the night. All of these movies need to be seen by you, Josh, because it sounds like you've got a lot of cool inspiration to draw from these for future Neon Chrome stuff. All of you
most definitely, Mo.
Definitely get together and watch.
And I thank you for that, bro. That's one thing I'm like most thankful for getting included on this is like new movies for me to check out.
Oh, you would have a hell of a week if you watched one of these every single day. But Lady Hawk,
bro, I'm ready to have a hell of a week, son of a bitch.
Michelle Pfeiffer, Rutger Hauer, Matthew Broderick. Check this out. Also, after we get back, I want to hear your guys' thoughts on old Jack Palance.
Michelle Pfeiffer and Matthew Broderick, you got my eyes ready.
Let's do it.
He was a pickpocket who thought that anything was better than prison. Little did he know what he'd escaped from wasn't half as strange or frightening as what he'd stumbled into.
I do not believe what I believe, Lord. These are magical, unexplainable matters, and I beg you not to make me a part of them.
The knight who had saved him wanted only two things: to free his lover and to take his revenge.
I have waited almost 2 years for a sign from God.
Sir, the truth is I talk to God all the time. And no offense, but he never mentioned you.
The pickpocket was the key to his plan. But would you send a thief to guard your treasure? He was the last one in the world to act like a hero. It just happened by itself. And he was drawn into a magical, romantic adventure. Matthew Broderick, Michelle Pfeiffer, Rutger Hauer, Lady Hawk.
I would agree, Tyler. I think that 80s fantasy was the peak of it. You know, you got some good stuff in the 70s, you got some great stuff in the 90s, but the 80s just took the cake, and it was being cranked out like crazy. So there's just no shortage of it to check out. I mean, we have enough material for at least like a good 4 to 5 more episodes on favorite fantasy flicks before we ever even start dipping into like the sort of I guess, you know. Yeah,
So
that'd
you're
be the
really gonna
point where
tell
we...
me?
Go ahead.
No, go finish what you're saying.
I don't know if I really had a point. You probably are gonna make a better statement.
Michelle Pfeiffer, Matthew Broderick, Rutger Hauer. What the fuck can go wrong? I'm sorry. That's like a perfect.
It's insane. And the amount of people that haven't seen it that love all sorts of other movies those guys are in is nuts. Lady
I'm
Hawk
a
is
huge
like one of
fan
those
of Wanted
movies
Dead or
that...
Alive with Rutger Hauer, Gene Simmons, and the guy that plays the dad in Boy Meets World. Can't remember his name.
I know the film you're talking about. It's a great movie.
Well,
He literally
fucking
puts a
spill
grenade
the
in Gene
beans.
Simmons'
What's the
mouth at
name
the
of
end of
it?
the movie. It's like, fuck you. Boom.
He's talking about Wanted Dead or Alive with Rutger Hauer. I'd
I'd like to fucking watch that sitting on top of your hairy belly right there, Dave.
Oh, sure.
That sounds like a great time. Pop
I
one of
got
those
Wanted
teats
Dead
in
or
my
Alive
mouth.
sitting on top of my hairy belly. You want to see?
Fucking weirdo. Holy shit.
Sure. Maybe you can help me.
You think I'm joking?
Soon.
Holy shit, bro. What was it? Wanted Dead or Alive was the name of it?
Yeah, hold on, wait, real quick. Hey, check it out. I got this like hairy belly thing going on.
Holy shit.
Hey, there's Rutger Hauer under my belly.
It's Harry with Hauer. Yeah, what the fuck is he doing down there? Holy crap.
No, I got
Rutger
Wanted Dead or
Hauer
Alive. It's
an international treasure.
Hobo with a Shotgun. I'm sorry. That is vastly underseen, underrated, motherfucking national gem.
It will be covered on the channel eventually.
Unfortunately,
when you do, let me know. I want to be there.
Unfortunately,
Willow is another one that
Rutger
will
Hauer.
be showing up on here. Willow, that transformation scene in that fucked me up as a kid. So I'm looking forward to talking about that on the show eventually. Rutger Hauer is dead.
The fucking Hitcher! Ty-Lord, the Hitcher. Oh my lord, that scene where the shit gets pulled apart. That's like,
dude. The Hitcher is.
You don't need to get gory. You just got to get weird, and that just don't
Both
get gory.
Their performances in The Hitcher are nuts too. Like even outside of the violent stuff, just the performances in that version.
Exactly. He's like, "Tell me you want to die." He's like, "I don't want to die." And he, you know. From then, the movie just...
I'd love to pull the Hitcher out of my shorts. Maybe one day that'll happen.
You know, I just pulled Wanted Dead or Alive out of my belly, so maybe we'll see about pulling the Hitcher out of Mo's shorts.
Rutger Hauer out of there.
Get in my belly!
You just pull Rutger Hauer.
Get in my belly!
Like,
no, we're pulling the Hitcher out of your shorts one day, Mo. It's gonna happen.
Yeah.
And
Rutger Hauer pops out and it's like, oh shit, he's in there with Elvis and Tupac and fucking apparently Julian Sands isn't dead either. That'd be sick. There's all in my pants. And
there's Jimmy Hoffa's fucking bones.
Yep. And the definitive evidence to finally convict OJ. You know. For Norm. We're doing it for Norm. Finally bringing justice.
Norm?
Norm, like Norm McDonald?
Of course.
No, the lovable beer guzzling Norm.
Norm!
You know what movie he was good in? House, which we'll also be covering on this at some point. So I don't know, based on your understanding of what a fantasy movie is, Josh, do you have any that you liked, even if they're not the ones that were listed here.
No, I'm pretty much going to go through the whole list of things that were trailered here tonight and then go from there.
You never watched like Lord of the Rings or any of that?
I'll tell you, oh God, I'm probably going to like hang myself here talking
You like
about my opinion on
like
Lord
a
of the Rings.
Narnia or a Harry Potter? I'm
my
fine with that.
school took me to see Lord of the Rings back in the day, and it was like a field trip. They took us there, and it was paid for, and I pretty much just napped. I couldn't get into it. Forgive me.
Hey, it's not for everyone. You might like a lot
They
of
gave
the
me 3
more
different movies to
gratuitous
try to get into, and I was
fantasy
just like,
stuff.
nope. And I napped. But no, long
Death
story
Stalker
short,
is probably more up your
I need
alley,
yeah. I guess my shit's just, when it comes to my taste, it's very niche. And I don't mean that to sound exclusive. It just mostly because I haven't seen a lot of shit.
Well, what you gotta one thing that helps, I find, with horror fans when I start cluing them into this stuff, because there's been a few that I've got to go from being like strict regimented horror fans to being just fans of like genre films in general. And it really comes down to the fact that sci-fi and fantasy were always sister genres with horror. Like usually they were published in the same publications back
It's
in
like
the day.
punk rock and metal in the 80s.
Yeah, like they're going to show up in similar areas. I mean, and they're kind of related through different avenues.
Most definitely.
And that's the same thing. I mean, sci-fi, fantasy, and horror all share elements, and even distinctly unique as they are, kind of draw from the same sort of wondrous, whimsical, insane part of your brain that, allows you to get behind weird ideas.
Most definitely.
So weird cinema to me, while I'll always be more of a horror dude, also will always encompass science fiction and fantasy as well. So I guess I'm a little more old school in it, in that I'm just into the general pulp fiction genres as opposed to, sticking to just one thing. And that's throughout my whole life, like I always gravitated more to the horror stuff, but then I always had uncles and like cousins and just pop culture showing me fantasy and sci-fi stuff. So I like that stuff as well. I mean,
for me, I guess it's just what it comes down to is I was discovering so much old school shit when it was old, like the 80s stuff when it was old, and now I'm finally catching up.
Oh yeah, and there's always new stuff to discover. I've got a couple of bands I will send your way tonight.
Most definitely. And it's not that I'm knocking anything new, because I don't knock anything new, but it's just what it comes down to is I just haven't been exposed to a lot of that, So expose myself
and that's
to
the
it.
Beauty of this kind of community, right? Like we can all get together and just show each other weird shit. That's kind of
fucking amo.
Cliff from fucking Cheers it was in House 2. That's true.
No shit.
Yeah, they got a Cheers thing going on with those House movies. Country says he watched almost every Lord of the Rings movie made, the animated ones and the live action films. Yeah, I love them. I mean,
I'll tell you, I'm a vast minority when I said I fell asleep. I'm a vast minority.
Well, who knows, too? I mean, you
they're
might
damn
have
good
fallen
movies.
asleep during the movies, but if you read, like, The Hobbit, just the novel, you'd probably blast through it in, like, 3 days and think it was amazing. I mean, I don't know.
Most
I
definitely.
love Tolkien and hate Tolkien in equal measure. And I think that kind of becomes the default position for most lifelong Tolkien fans. Once you've read all of it, is some of it's fucking real fun, and then some of it's a headache or a bore, and that's
for sure
just the way that it works out. Tyler says, how about Sorceress Death Stalker series, Ator? All that shit's going to be talked about on here eventually. Country says, though, Q the Winged Serpent is more horror than fantasy. I still count it, since the monster is like an Aztec god. It's part of their folklore and everything. Reincarnates itself via worship and sacrifices. Good one, especially if you want to watch Michael Moriarty, I think his name is, just be like the badass complaining New Yorker that he is for a solid 90 minutes. I love Q the Winged Serpent. It's awesome. Same guy that did the animated Lord of the Rings is the guy that did Fire and Ice. So when you look at the two, it's easy to see the similarity because it's the same dude. It's a shame that we didn't get more Rankin and Bass adaptations of those.
Or Ralph Bakshi,
because those were dope. Bakshi, I think, could have done a solid Lord of the Rings trilogy, but I don't see him doing some of the lighter stuff.
No, definitely.
Like, I couldn't picture Ralph Bakshi's adaptation of The Hobbit, for example.
That would be insane.
Yeah.
It'd be like putting Tim Burton behind that.
Something like that, yeah. Teller says, I always thought that movie, She, felt like a fantasy, although it was post-apocalyptic. I still haven't seen that. So, verdict's out. Dave might know what you're talking about, though.
She?
She.
Oh, She, yeah. I know who he's talking about.
So that about does it, guys. We're pretty much done with the favorite fantasy flicks. Definitely check out Josh's band, Neon Chrome. You can follow them on Facebook. Hopefully we'll get some of those live recordings out there, or something that we can listen to here soon. I've heard like snippets of it, and it sounds fucking dope, like exactly the type of thing I would go nuts for live. But we gotta get some recordings out there.
That's my goal, is to make you go nuts live. But until we get our proper recording, like I said, we're not wanting to half-ass anything, so it's pretty much, saving up to get a damn good recording.
Fair enough. Dave also does, Inside Movies Galore and Delusions of Grandeur. I believe their last episode for Movies Galore was Bed Knobs and Broomsticks.
Hell yeah.
So definitely check that out. What was your last Delusions of Grandeur?
For Delusions of Grandeur, it was Inception.
Right on. We've been cranking out some stuff over here. We did some test streams with the Retro Cult video logs. I'll probably bring that back at some point. Not super happy with how some of those went, but that was mostly on my end. So I'm going to try to recut them and put them back out there and then relaunch it at some point. But in terms of the Schlockaholic stuff, I feel like these last few streams have went real well. We've had a lot of fun, Hills Have Eyes one, we that one and the fucking American Werewolf one, we kind of derailed at the end and just had some fun, but that's what this is always all gonna be about.
It happens.
So if you guys like that kind of thing, keep tuning in, subscribe, tell your friends, crack a few beers, watch the new review. Our next one that we got coming up is definitely going to be for Amityville Webcam, which is a movie that we featured in as a podcast and as just friends. It was done by our buddy Brandon, fellow co-host of the channel. So we'll be checking that out. And then hopefully our next Classic Cuts review will be the postponed Starman review, because man, is that movie good. And I think that a lot of people would have a lot of fun talking about it with us. So that's it, man.
Starman waiting across the sky. Sorry, I had to.
Hey, man, Starman rules. If you haven't seen it, you should watch it, even if you're not going to be on the show, because it kicks ass. The next mixtape episode is going to be for non-franchise slasher flicks, and in the spirit of that, we are going to play a trailer for just one of those right now. Just a little sneak peek what we're going to be talking about next time. So check this out. We'll look at our last couple of comments here, and we'll see you guys in the next one. Someone had asked earlier too if Beowulf would factor into fantasy. I believe that it would. I'd like to check out the new Beowulf movie that Country is mentioning there. I would like to cover the Christopher Lambert one that was done back in the day, because that was pretty fucking kick-ass, especially if you're drunk. And I would definitely like to talk about the animated one as well, because I've never gotten around to seeing it. But yeah, this has been the Midnight Movie Mixtape, baby. Favorite fantasy films. Hopefully you guys will be back here for our next episode with the favorite non-franchise slasher flicks, because we got stuff like this right now.
This man is about to commit the most atrocious crimes in American history.
Linda Githens, age 22. Valerie Hoffman, age 24. Mary Ann Stevens, age 21. These women have one thing in common. They are all victims of the Toolbox Murders.
What the hell are you doing?
Toolbox Murders. On July 23rd, 1977, a hooded killer terrorized a small suburb of Los Angeles, California. His identity was unknown, but he committed a series of crimes so fiendish that it shocked the entire country. He struck with no warning. He preyed on innocent young women. In his hands, simple tools became the instruments of death.
Do anything you say, please. Put it down. Listen to me, please.
His victims died screaming, but for the ones still alive, the worst was yet to come. The Toolbox Murders, a true